Welcome back to Views from the ED. My name is Irene, your ER nurse here in Utah. And this week we're going to go over the different protests going around the world. We also have an interview with one of our nurses here in the ER discussing COVID-19 in children. And then we have our weekly questions. There are protests in Texas, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, California, and of course here in Utah, to name a few. Even several nurses were protesting in Pennsylvania against anti-quarantine rallies. Two healthcare workers in Denver made quite the viral stir online that begged the question, should we be forced to stay at home? The right to dissent and demonstration in order to provide one's position is what most Americans welcome here. And I guess so much so that they had a rally to protest the other protest. There have been protests by healthcare workers, protesting the lack of PPE. And if you only think it's happening here in the States, you're totally wrong. It's happening in Russia, India, Brazil, just to name a few. How about when all this is over, instead of dividing ourselves, we gather ourselves as a community all around the country and celebrate our survival and pay tribute to our losses? Will these demonstrations prove to be effective? Only time will tell. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Allie. I'm an RN in the emergency room here in Utah.
All right, Allie. And our topic this week is basically pediatrics. And with COVID-19, a lot of patients, or actually parents, are worried about taking their kids in because they don't want them, they're worried about them getting infected with COVID-19. Sure. Just in general, when should parents bring in their children?
So first of all, COVID-19 doesn't really affect kiddos like under 9. So as far as that goes, they might carry it, but they're not going to get super sick from it, if that makes sense. So you can be a carrier, not be infected, and have that actual infection going on actively. So that should help parents feel a little bit better that if their kids are younger, they're pretty okay with, and they're not going to necessarily get a real bad infection. But a lot of the symptoms with COVID, shortness of breath, cough, fever, can all mimic other childhood illnesses that we see all the time in the ER, especially where we're at, and we deal with almost on not a daily basis, but we have respiratory season, and so we see it a lot. Bronchiolitis, croup is another one. Any type of cold is going to give you a fever, so all of those will come with fevers. And then bronchiolitis, lots of snot and nasal congestion. If it's an infant, they sometimes have a hard time feeding because they breathe through their nose, so they have to choose between eating and breathing. So if they're having difficulty eating because they can't breathe, suction first. If that doesn't help, then I would take them in because they need to be able to eat and breathe both. And then croup, they get that barky cough. Stridor, you can really hear it. It's more upper airway. It's all upper airway actually. So those are very distinct sounds. So not necessarily a reason to come to the ER just because the cough or the secretions and fever. You can do fever control, which Tylenol, ibuprofen, you alternate the two every 3 to 4 hours, and it makes them happier. When you're having those respiratory symptoms and you start seeing signs of increased work of breathing, we call it, that's when you should maybe think about coming into the ER. So you'll notice maybe by their collarbone, the ribs, they kind of pull in or retract if they're working that hard to retract, especially if it's all up in here. These we see first, right, in the ribs. We see that first. So you can keep an eye on that. But once it starts up in here, and if they're pulling really hard in their neck too to breathe, head bobbing is another thing they do to try and help with that grunting. They're trying to increase what we call their PEEP. And so that's another sign of struggling to breathe easy. That would make us nervous. So if you notice grunting, or sometimes if they're older, not infants, they'll sit forward in what we call a tripod position. So they'll take their arms and they'll sit a little bit forward, and it's a tripod like this, right? I would bring kiddos in for that.
Yeah, and what can parents do at home because, like you said, you mentioned earlier, sometimes you can just treat certain things at home if it's just mild. What would you do as a mom? What would you do for your child? You mentioned the ibuprofen, Tylenol. What other things can you do to help them?
My poor kiddos, they never come to the ER. They have to be dying, you know. But so fever, of course, it makes them feel puny. Let me just tell you, fever is our friend. We like when there's a fever. That means the body is fighting whatever infection they have going on. The only reason we medicate is to make them feel comfortable. It's not necessarily that the fever is dangerous. I know parents get worried when there's like febrile seizures. That is a normal thing we see in pediatric patients. It's not a dangerous thing. It's scary to watch, definitely, but it's not necessarily dangerous. As long as the seizure is only lasting a couple of minutes. More than that, then it's probably a seizure not due to fever. So that, just so you know, so it doesn't freak you out too much. And then, so besides the antipyretic medication we talked about, push fluids. Fever makes them dehydrated faster. They don't have the stores that we do as adults. Actually, having fluids is going to keep their temp down. So that's helpful. And sometimes they don't like to eat when they're sick, which is okay. We don't mind not eating for a few days as long as they're getting fluids. So water, you can do like the Pediatric type of stuff. Some kids don't like the way it tastes. I like to take apple juice and water and mix it and make a 50-50 solution, and my kids love that.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Allie, for
You're welcome.
doing this interview.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
And the question for this week is, how do you feel about Utah starting to open up on May 1st? So I have mixed emotions about it opening up on May 1st. As a healthcare worker, of course, I'm concerned that everyone is just going stir crazy at home and just want to get out, and then it might bring rise to the coronavirus and people getting infected, and it's just going to get worse. And so, of course, I'm worried about that. On the other hand, I understand too that people are losing money. The unemployment rate is higher than it's ever been here in Utah. Small businesses are getting shut down because of the loss of profit. So I get it. I totally understand that we need to get our economy back into the swing of things. So I have mixed emotions. Only time will tell if May 1st will be a good thing. I think they definitely need to do it slowly, and people need to be careful and make sure that if they're not feeling good, they're feeling sick, to still stay home. I think that we still should be making sure that we're doing good hand hygiene and still social distancing to a degree, for sure. Question number 2 was, how do you feel about the protests recently? And my answer is, I definitely understand the need to protest, especially people just losing their minds, losing money, and not wanting to be told what to do. I get that. But I think it could have been done more effectively. Not using masks, or bringing assault rifles, having the Confederate flag in some of these, I don't agree to that. I think it could have been done way more effectively and efficiently, and I just don't think some of the things that they were doing was right. It could have been done better. My third question is an easy one. How do you feel today? Well, today I feel tired because I've been working a lot recently, but the good thing is, again, in the hospital, we still haven't seen the numbers that New York has been seeing. So I'm happy about that. We still have PPE in our department. I feel safe there. I am feeling a little antsy being quarantined. I know it's needed. I do want to get out, but I just want to make sure everyone's safe. Yourself?
I'm Karen. I'm an ER nurse in Utah.
All right. And Karen, how do you feel about them opening things up starting May 1st?
So I kind of have a personal stake in it because my husband is a small business owner.
Oh, so you're pretty interesting.
For us, it's actually, while we have been able to continue to do business, there's been a real downturn because a lot of his clients are restaurants.
Oh man!
So he lost like 70% of his business because his clients were all closed up. So for me, I think it has to happen eventually.
Okay.
And so I am all for opening things up, and hopefully that the governor and everybody else will be very smart and thoughtful in how they plan to do it.
And how do you feel about the protests going around the world about going against this whole situation of social distancing and quarantine?
I don't know that it's necessarily going against social distancing. And here's the thing, I saw somebody, I think it was one of our docs, posted a thing about how, you never know what somebody else is feeling. You never know what somebody else is experiencing, particularly in this, because my husband and I have been fortunate that I'm still working, he's still working, so we haven't had to change our lifestyle. Neither of us have had to go on unemployment. So we've been able, financially we're very secure, but there are people who are not working. We had to lay off a couple of our employees who had to go on unemployment. That was the hardest decision we've ever had to make as business owners.
Oh, I bet.
And so there are people out there, I think, who just want to go back to work. Businesses who just want to stay open. And so while I don't necessarily agree with their methods, there's part of me that has compassion for the places that they're coming from.
Okay. And how are you feeling overall today? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I just had 4 days off, so I'm coming back fresh.
Awesome. I'm happy to work with you today. Thanks, Karen.
Yep.
I'm Jen, CCT.
Hey, Jen, and how do you feel about things opening up here in Utah on the 1st of May?
I think people are gonna go crazy and go everywhere they can go.
And how do you feel about it?
It's gonna bring us more patients, but that's noticeable. It's gonna spread a lot faster than it has been recently.
Okay, and how do you feel about the protests going on?
I think people need to be a little bit more considerate of others, just because we deal with a lot of things, and it's usually people that don't wash their hands or something, or get an infection, or just get punched in the face really hard.
Okay. And how are you feeling today?
I'm good. I am very good.
Feeling good? Feeling great?
Great.
Happy to be here?
Every day. It's a new party.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. So,
Hi, I'm Susanna. I'm a nurse in a community ER.
all right. And how do you feel about them opening things up here in Utah on May 1st?
It sounds great because I need a haircut. However, I think we're going to see a big spike in cases. I don't think we've really seen a spike, at least here in Utah, per se, here in my ER. But I think when they do open things, I think we're going to see a lot of people coming down with it, simply because if you give a person an inch, they take a mile. So I think it's necessary in some respects for sure, but yeah, it might be a little premature.
Awesome. And then how do you feel about the protests going on too here in Utah?
I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get what these guys don't get. So it's interesting. There's not much you can do against the biological problem in the world. So protesting I just don't understand their viewpoint.
Okay.
I don't.
And overall, how are you feeling today?
I'm great today.
Doing
I'm
good.
waiting for our food and having a good day.
Awesome. Thank you, Susanna.
You're welcome.
Self.
My name is Ryan, and I'm a critical care tech in the ED.
All right. And how do you feel about things opening up on May 1st here in Utah?
I have a little bit of mixed emotions. I think that we should open things up, but when we do, we should still take those precautions of staying 6 feet away from each other, being extra careful to sanitize our hands before and after touching things, and just wash our hands after for sure.
Awesome. And then how do you feel about the protests going on?
I think the protesting is a little too much. I think there is better ways to get your point across. I feel like the protesting is more of a political thing versus a medical thing.
Okay. And last question, how are you feeling today, Ryan?
I feel good. I think things are gonna start getting better.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan.
No.
Introduce yourself.
My name's Brenton. I'm security at the hospital.
All right. And how do you feel about May 1st? We're opening everything again.
We're not opening everything again. We're going to slowly move back into opening some things up piece by piece.
And how do you
I think
feel
that's a
about
good idea. That needs to happen.
Okay. And then how do you feel about the protests going on?
I think people have a right to protest like always. I don't see any difference from any kind of other protests. I think some people are being silly in the way they're protesting, but that's, usually the case with protests.
Awesome. And how are you feeling today?
I feel great.
Oh, wonderful. Happy to be here.
I feel great. I feel wonderful. I feel good. I feel great. I feel wonderful. Yes, I'm happy to be here. I've worked several shifts in a row. I think this is my 20th consecutive shift.
Oh,
Yep, and just doing what I can to help out.
awesome. Thank you, Brenton.
You bet, Irene.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Callie. I'm a critical care tech in the emergency department.
All right. And how do you feel, Kelly, about them opening things up on May 1st?
I don't think it's a very good idea. I think throwing everybody in, tight places again, in businesses, grocery stores, etc. It's going to definitely spread the virus more, like it did before our numbers dropped, before we started social distancing and everything.
Awesome. And then how do you feel about the protesting that's going on?
Oh, it makes me so mad.
Why?
Seriously. Because I think I think those people are being selfish. I think they need to be respectful about what's going on and other people's health and theirs and their families. I just think it's selfish that people just want to go out and shop again and go see movies and do all that stuff when a lot of people's health and lives are at stake.
Okay. And then my last question, easy one. How are you feeling today?
Great. Ready to go home.
All
Feeling
right.
really good. It's been a good day.
All right. Thank you, Kelly.
Yes.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lonnie. I'm a nurse in Utah.
All right. And how do you feel about them starting to open things up on May 1st here in Utah?
I think it's good if people take precautions. If people are smart about it, then it's a good idea. There's my biggest concern is if we don't open things up, I'm worried about our suicide rate, our domestic violence rate. There's a whole lot of underlying issues that if we don't, people are really, really going to be hurting, and we'll have a whole other problem.
Okay. And then how do you feel about the protesters that are protesting right now in Utah?
I think it's irresponsible. And we're supposed to be social distancing, and now they have a big group that they're putting together. It's just irresponsible, and I don't think it's going to get anything done.
Okay. And an easy question for you. How are you feeling today, Lonnie?
I feel good today because I worked in my garden all morning
nice.
before I came into work, so that was a good outlet.
Awesome.
And I think we're doing a great job here in Utah, so I'm proud of the work we've done.
Awesome. Thank you, Lonnie.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself.
So my name's Spencer. I'm an ER physician here in Utah.
All right. And how do you feel about them starting to open things up on May 1st here in Utah?
I think the state of Utah, the governor, and all of the people advising him have done a good job thus far of keeping Utahns safe. And so if the data suggests that we can start to open things up a little bit and that restrictions can be pulled back, then they're very smart people, and so I would be supportive of that.
Okay. And how do you feel about the protesting going on in Utah right now?
I think the protesting was not handled very well. I think all of the work that thousands and thousands of people have done to self-quarantine, to social distance, it was a little childish. It was a little selfish for people to do an antiquated protest of, gathering together. I think there would have been a lot more highly effective means of protesting, and I have nothing against people protesting, but I think doing it in that fashion was very distasteful and didn't accomplish what they really wanted to accomplish.
Awesome. And then how are you feeling today, Spencer?
My temperature was 36.5, so I feel great. I really enjoy my job. I love coming to work. Work's been different over the last 2 months. I don't enjoy wearing my mask all the time and having to wear all the PPE in every room and not knowing who's sick and not sick. And so it's definitely changed my workflow, but I still love work, and I feel fine. I feel good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Lindsay, and I am a nurse in the ER.
And how do you feel about them starting to open things up on May 1st?
I think it's a good thing that the economy is starting to open back up again. I I think people need to still practice like social distancing and be responsible. I think it's still a good idea to wear masks, but our economy needs to recover. I know people say, oh, it'll bounce back, but it's actually going to take a long time, I think, for all the effects of this to be fully felt, and also for the economy to fully recover if it does.
All right. And then how do you feel about the protesting going on in Utah?
I think the protesting is silly. I think they're being irresponsible. I understand they're frustrated, but if you want to do it in a safe way, not gathering in mass groups. I mean, that's how illness is spread. Any illness, not just COVID.
All right. And how are you feeling today, Lindsay?
I'm glad to be here.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Nikki.
And Nikki, how do you feel about Utah starting to open things back up on May 1st?
I feel like it needs to happen. I do. I have conflicting feelings. I feel like obviously the longer we quarantine, the safer it's going to be. But I know people who are really struggling out there. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law have both lost their jobs right now. So it's really hard for some people. It's not just staying at home. Some of them have literally lost their livelihood. So that's tough. And I feel like, if we're truly in like a stabilization phase is what I was trying to say. If we're truly there, I feel like we probably do need to start. I mean, I'm not saying like let's not all run out and dance naked in the streets or anything, but let's get things going just a little bit more, get people going. I expect it'll cause a little bit of a surge, but I don't know. We'll see.
Right. And how do you feel about the protesting going on in Utah as well?
Oh, same thing. Like, at first I got super mad. Like, I was really mad. I kind of heard about it, like, on my way in from work. And it's more like the people complaining about, like, not being able to get their hair done or not being able to... It's like, no. But then when I talk to people, like my sister and brother-in-law, like, they've lost their jobs. They're really struggling. And, so I feel very similarly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, conflicted,
yeah, I get that. And so, third question, easy question, how are you feeling today?
I feel good today. Well, that's a lie. I had a rough day.
You had a rough day?
I had a little meltdown today. Homeschool's going terribly and this, that, and the other. This was one of those days I was glad to leave home and come to work.
Well, I'm happy to work with you today, Nikki.
Happy to be working with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So these are my final thoughts. We're all ready for this to be over. Some days it feels like a monotonous blur of chores that's never ending. And then to top it all off, we have these earthquakes that keep coming. It's enough to drive anyone a little neurotic. There are 3,948 cases here in Utah, 41 deaths of the total cases, and it's estimated that there have been 1,399 that have recovered. What do all these numbers mean? It basically means we have a low mortality rate with the virus. But from the worldwide quarantine and what we're seeing in New York, this virus is highly contagious, so we have to be careful. Take the time to hug your loved ones. Be grateful for the things you do have and know deep inside that this too shall pass. The one thing we all can agree on is that the world will never be the same.